episode of Your Business with Accent Nominees. My name is Daniel Olukayode Adeyemo, and we'll be taking it from where we stopped last week. Last week we looked at the Nigeria Startup Act and what startups should know, and we considered a few things. We gave a background to the Nigeria Startup Act, what warranted it, the needs that have been on ground that the Act seeks to remedy. We looked at structures and systems and structures that ensure implementation of this Act, that is, systems and structures have been put in place to ensure that the provisions of this Act the provisions and the objectives of this Act are accomplished. Then we also looked at entities that qualify to be called a startup. Prior to the establishment of this Act, anyone can just come and say, oh, this is a startup, but now the word, the term startup has been defined. So to call yourself a startup, you need to abide by the conditions that that govern that label called startup. We also looked at what to do, to be one. That is what to do to be tagged a startup. All right. So today we'll be taking it further by looking at some of the benefits that you can get if you apply to be labeled a startup. And one is funding. In the business environment, one of the issues that people raise from time to time is funding. We have the Tony Elumelu Foundation. You see them, they committed about $100 million to training about 10,000 entrepreneurs. You see people, when this application comes out, you see tons of people actually apply for this because it's a major issue. As far as Nigeria is concerned, as far as Africa is concerned. So funding is a major issue, and the Nigeria Startup Act has taken measures which we hope that once it is implemented, or as it is being implemented, it will benefit a whole lot of entrepreneurs in general, especially those using tech in what they do. All right, so one thing the Act has done is to establish a startup investment seed fund, and what this fund is basically that every year at least 10 billion naira is put into this fund to just to fund businesses that are just starting out, small scale businesses that are just starting out, and beyond that, all right, this fund could also be used to look into issues such as basically to fund small scale entrepreneurs that are just starting out, of course. For example, an entrepreneur, a startup that wants to look into incubator programs or accelerator programs, to just provide a form of relief for them in applying for this program. So at least 10 billion naira, meaning it can be more. All right, and of course, this the Act recognizes the partnership of other private bodies that seek to accomplish the aim of this Act, which is to bring about a more developed startup ecosystem. All right, so there's also let's even be more practical. Not every startup might actually get to benefit from this, but then there's also another platform, which is the credit guarantee scheme. Now, the credit guarantee scheme provides startups that are labeled. Remember what we said last week on the procedures you need to go through to be labeled a startup. So once you're labeled a startup, you will also be entitled to the credit guarantee scheme, which allows labeled startups to have access to loan facilities, to grants generally. All right, so all what this does is that in collaboration with the CBN, Bank of Industry, all of these are made available to you as a startup. All right, and beyond, of course, still talking about funding, one of the things is also tax incentives, right? Tax incentives, for me, is a major benefit, because when you're starting out in your business, obviously you're not making as much as someone that has been in business for probably 10-15 years that is profitable. So in order not to choke you up and all of that, there are incentives for you, especially pending the 10-year period when you enjoy that tax, when you enjoy that label as a startup. All right, so one of those things is tax holiday. So you are granted tax holiday for 3 years, then an additional 2 years, provided you're still within the 10-year frame of the startup label that you're given. All right, another is entitlement to full deduction of any expense on research and development, that is incurred in Nigeria here. All right, every amount you spent on the expenses you have in terms of research and development in Nigeria, you are entitled to deduct every of those things while remitting whatever taxes that were remitted. All right. Another is export incentives. So if your startup is into exporting of goods and services outside of Nigeria, there are export incentives for you to enjoy. All right. Another is exemption from contributions made to the industrial training fund. So what this one is saying is this: I don't want to go ahead of myself, because one of the benefits is that this act provides is building talent. All right. But I'll just speak to this in line with what we're trying to say. Dedicate resources into building people on your team, the employees on your team. So once you are doing that, you won't be entitled to you won't be paying anything to the industrial training fund, which we'll be looking at very shortly. All right. So once you can show proof that we are training our staff, we are building them, the equivalent of what you get in an innovator or I don't know any. So one thing that really works here is that you need to apply, especially for the other ones we mentioned, the top three we mentioned. They go out to go for any extra training. We are investing in them. We are providing all the trainings they need. This one allows you to as a startup to be paying another extra charges into the industrial training fund. All right. So beyond that, like I mentioned slightly earlier, the act encourages partnership. All right. So they're not saying they are capable of solving the whole issues with funding or all of these things. So they try to provide incentives for external parties, private institutions to come in and say, you know what, come and partner with us, come and invest in our the startups, come and just come and contribute into making our startup ecosystem better than what it is already. All right. So, but in order to do this, they've also provided incentives for them as well. So it's not just the startups now that enjoy incentives; investors enjoy incentives as well. All right. So there are two major incentives here, which is the investment tax credit of 30% for investors that invest in startups within this label. All right. So that's one. Another is free repatriation of funds for foreign investors. So how this works is this: you need to prove. So that's the only, more or less like the only order, which is not really an order, provided you do things right. All right. In bringing in capital to invest, you must have passed through the legal route. All right. You must have passed through the legal route for bringing in funds, and how you are able to prove that is you being able to present a certificate of capital importation. So once you're able to present this, no issues, you are entitled to repatriate free repatriation of funds, easily once you feel that your funds have done the work it needs to do in the startup. All right. So now let's move on to. Yes, we're still talking about the benefits. Now there's the Startup Consultative Forum, and one thing, if you ask me, one thing I would say about this particular act is that it fosters collaboration. They do not consider themselves to be one in all that can actually solve all of the issues. They encourage people to come in, like we just saw in the issue of the investment, right? So there are existing bodies already that really do some of the things that are provided for in this act. But one thing they do is to people. But in the sense of the Startup Consultative Forum, what this one is saying is that, see, let us reason together, come together, stakeholders, the federal government, let us, come together, let us liaise. All right. And for me, I believe it's in this coming together that favorable policies that create an enabling environment for businesses come up, because they're able to talk, one-on-one. It's not something, they're able to have deep conversations, they're able to hear the sides of businesses, and the businesses too can hear the sides of the government. So this in itself fosters collaboration. All right. So basically, that's what this forum is meant to accomplish. So all of those issues we used to have in the past of unfavorable government policies and all of those things would not be the case. And I just want to chip this in. Maybe I should chip it in the end. All right. We have regulatory interventions, and what this one is saying is that this act as you know, with the help of the secretariat, they seek to help fast track a lot of things, right? For example, registration processes for getting into regulatory sandbox programs like the incubator program, the accelerator program, all of those things. The registration process you need to go through, all right? This act, by virtue of the secretariat, you know, they fast track the registration process so that you're able to be a part of all of these programs. On the other hand, we also have fast tracking registration process for securing licenses. So one thing we know, as far as tech is concerned, especially the fintech people, we know at some point you need to approach the Securities and Exchange Commission and all of those things, all of those bodies. So one thing they seek to do is to allow you to, you know, get easy access. All right, easy access. I mean, easy access to securing license. So what I'm trying to say is that you're able to secure your licenses without any hassle. You know, that is one thing they're trying to do, and that's what their intervention has come to do. Of course, for the Nigerian Stock Exchange, you're able to get your listing on the stock exchange if you're trying to go public, you know, without stress. All right, they're trying to make things easier according to the provisions of the act. All right, so another is the protection of your IP. That is, now one thing this act seeks to do is that it makes startups more aware of their intellectual property. All right, so one thing I see, you know, in this is that they help you in commercializing your intellectual property rights. All right, are you trying to register internationally, or are you trying to file an action against someone that's infringed on your rights? So you are entitled. One thing this act does is to provide an enabling environment for you to, you know, to benefit from your intellectual property, all right, on every level. Another thing is technology transfer. So one thing this act does, especially with regards to the secretariat, in collaboration with NOTAP, that is the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, is to ensure that there is ease in transfer of technology, you know. So I think that's that on that. So like I said earlier, when I was talking about the industrial training fund, what I was not going to say. So this is what I was going to say, that there provisions have been made for talent to be developed. And if you remember last week, I don't know if I mentioned it, and one of the issues that are faced by startups generally is the apart from funding, is inadequate human resources. All right, so, and even when you find people, they are not so equipped. All right, so now there's that wants to upskill. So there are programs in ground for them to actually build themselves, you know, up. So any employer that will not dedicate, you know, certain budget towards training their employees would have to contribute into the industrial training fund to ensure that they enjoy the benefits of being trained. All right, of course, like I said, other organizations, other private institutions are also encouraged to be a part of this. The floor is open for them to come in as well to make this the dream of, or should I say, the aim and objectives of this act a reality. All right, so well, I would just say another thing I should say is that before we round up is there's been establishment and operation of startup innovation clusters, orbs, physical and virtual innovation places, innovation parks in every state of the federation. You know, one of the things we looked at last week was the fact that, I don't know if I mentioned that as well, is that we have so much cluster, in the sense that, you know, when you want to start a business or you want to create a startup, they tell you that if you're really serious about this, you should move to Lagos, or if you're serious about this, you should go to Abuja, especially Lagos. All right, so one thing this act tries to do is to decentralize the startup ecosystem, such that in each state of the federation you're able to enjoy what you would similarly enjoy. Of course, what you enjoy in Lagos, you're able to find it in, you know, in Abia State, in Enugu State, in all of those states. All right, all over the state of the federation. And of course, I understand that this is a progressive. It would have to be of progressive implementation. All right. So what this act seeks to, you know, start all of these things. All right. So that is the reason for, you know, providing, you know, physical and virtual innovation parks, you know, innovation clusters, hubs here and there. I was in Abeokuta yesterday, and I was able to see first, and I was able to see that building where, you know, the tech hub. And yes, that's a step in the right direction. Things might not be perfect yet, but that is a step in the right direction, in my own opinion. All right. So just to wrap everything up, sorry. For me, this act is not perfect. It is not perfect because there are other issues. If professionals actually get into this, breaking down a lot of issues, there are things that still need to be sorted out. Yes, that is true. But for me, I believe also that the enactment of this act is a step in the right direction for us. Possible amendments can still be made, going forward, And mind you, we're not the first to actually adopt this act in Nigeria. Tunisia started it in 2018, and in 2019 they were able to get about $22.4 million dollars, right, worth of investment. So I feel like it's a step in the right direction. And let me even mention it about the Abeokuta hub. I read, I don't know how far it has been implemented, that the fact that they set up something like that attracted attention from external investors out of the country. So what can we say about this? I believe, not even that I believe it's a step in the right direction for as far as the economy is concerned, as far as the Nigerian economy is concerned. You can imagine all of these things being implemented. So that's the only thing we can hope for. For me, it's a good law. It's a good law. But if we can take further steps towards implementation, of course, as for the incoming government, if they would actually take this more seriously, I believe we will see the development we want to see. Because let's not forget that entrepreneurs actually built America. All right. So I believe this act has made an attempt towards providing an enabling environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. So I believe that as this act is implemented, we'll start to see changes, in our economy. Things would start to get better for us. So that will be all for this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.